Games Workshop are currently on the warpath, and they have recently tried to take down over 200 creations of the 3D STL file hosting website 3D Cults. And 3D Cults have said no, they're rebuffing Games Workshop. They're refusing to take down most of these files, which is not usual for hosters in this space. Usually, websites that receive copyright takedown notices like this tend to acquiesce to the copyright holders. And most often without any fight at all, because most of them are reasonably afraid of the potential litigation that it could entail, and all the money, time, expense, everything else that comes with that. So this refusal is kind of a big deal, and it's setting the stage for a potentially huge fight between a major, like probably one of the biggest file hosting websites for 3D STL files on the internet in the form of 3D Cults, and it's the Lady Dimitris of the miniature wargaming industry, Games Workshop. And there is a particularly interesting, we're gonna call it a wrinkle, but it's really a bombshell is what it is. Something that has just been dropped into the middle of this that I think is one of the most important parts of 3D printing and the future of 3D printing ever stated. Because now we know what 3D Cults are relying on in order to not remove certain files the Games Workshop want them to take down. 3D Cults have an argument in their camp. They have a position that they have taken, a very principled legal position. And it's gonna get contested by Games Workshop. This is gonna be, I think, at some stage, a massive legal battle. And the results of any such legal battle will absolutely determine the future of the 3D printing space. Hell, all of miniatures more than likely, to be honest. We're talking 3D printing, STL hosting websites, how other websites like My Mini Factory might be impacted in future, and even how websites like Patreon and Ko-fi might be obligated to act in future when it comes to people who are creating and selling 3D STL files and using those platforms to get payment. Hell, this will likely have a massive impact on how traditional miniatures are sold, how profitable the market is, and may even determine whether or not the My Little Pony fandom will be able to continue to share that art. By the end of the video, that last bit will really make sense, so stick with me here. Right, but first up, what's happening? What's going on? 3D Cults is a website that hosts 3D STL files that you can download onto your computer and then print with your 3D printer, so you can create your own miniatures. So 3D Cults is ostensibly a file sharing website. There's STL files for printing dinosaur puzzles and jewelry and busts of famous people and even some naughty stuff. With that last one, just make sure that the resin is cured. I speak from experience here. And you can buy lots of this stuff from their website, but equally, they host a ton of free creations as well. And evidentially, the enforcement squads deployed by Games Workshop have stumbled across this website and begin to trawl through it in search of copyright infringing materials, with their sniffer hounds rolling through like an inquisitor looking for gene stealer cultists. And apparently Games Workshop do indeed believe that they have found copyright infringing materials on the website of 3D Cults. So, Games Workshop have followed their usual modus operandi. They have identified a bunch of creations done by a number of smaller creators and issued takedown notices. They wrote to the hosting website, 3D Cults, and asked them to remove the offending files. And they were rebuffed. They were denied, mostly. And we know this because Pierre, the co-founder of 3D Cults, said so himself. He made a statement on his 3D Cults Discord. And in this statement, he says that of the hundreds of 3D STL files that were identified by Games Workshop, 65 creations have been taken down. And importantly, for our purposes, those files were all files that were being charged for by their creators. These are files that people were making money on, okay? This is really important. But Pierre goes on to say that if those creators of those files are able to amend the copyright terms of the files, then they'll be able to upload them once again, if 3D Cults judges those changes to be sufficient. And he also provided a huge list of words, and these words will prevent a creation from being hosted on 3D Cults in future, presumably if these words are used in the name or description of the file. And this list of sort of banned words, I guess, is exactly the type of words that you expect them to be. It contains terms like Games Workshop, 40k, Warhammer, Necromunda, Kane, Gloomspite, Necrons, Ultramarines. I mean, come on, guys, Ultramarines, it's a color. It's a color, guys. None of these are very surprising, although I did find it pretty funny that the words Space Marine were not included in these terms for being flagged. But many of these terms are trademarked by Games Workshop. This is also very, very important. We'll circle back to that as well. Now, there's a couple of things here that actually don't make sense to me. So Pierre mentions in his statement that creators can remove copyrighted terms in order to make their files suitable for hosting by 3D Cults once again. But I don't get it, to be honest. You see, copyright usually covers things like miniatures or books or video games, actual products. Whereas specific words and terms would usually be covered by trademark. So I'm not sure if Pierre just simply mistyped and meant to say that these trademark terms would flag the creations for deletion, or whether or not he means that the actual physical 3D files need to be amended in some way in order to make them feel or look a lot different from existing Games Workshop miniatures. You know, for example, if your miniature comes with far too many straps and is absolutely exhausting to paint, you know, you're gonna have to change it up a little bit, straying far too close to Warhammer models. So that's not clear to me. Is it the case that right now, creators, even if their models have been flagged as problematic or infringing by Games Workshop, can the creators of those models simply change the title or the description of the model itself and then be fine to get the files hosted again? I'm not sure. And this feeds in to my next point. So Pierre mentions that Games Workshop have identified 3D STL files. The Games Workshop claim infringe on their copyright. But the response from 3D Cults is to provide a list of words. Words that should not be used in the names or descriptions of 3D STL files. Words which also happen to be the words the Games Workshop have trademarked. So this suggests a couple of very specific things. So then, that actually suggests something. It tells us that Games Workshop, in their correspondence with 3D Cults, are seeking to get these 3D STL files removed from the website by relying on their trademarked terms rather than relying on their copyright to specific miniatures. You see, copyright is just when... Oh no. Oh god, I'm going to have to explain the difference between copyright and trademark, aren't I? This is legal talk. No, please, not the climb pin, not the climb pin, not the climb pin. Okay, so really quick, really easy, really basic. Copyright is just something that happens when you make stuff. No one gives it to you. It's your intrinsic right to make copies of your own stuff. And you can sell that right to other people or give them license to do copies as well, okay? So copyright is automatic. The moment you make something, you get the copyright to it. Easy peasy. Trademark is different. Trademark needs to be applied for and registered. And that means it's a stronger claim. It is the Conan to copyrights, I don't know, me. Look at me. You think I would last on the wheel? Probably not. I'd break in seconds. Although I suppose stronger isn't exactly 100% the right word to use. It's closer to the idea that trademark is a more specific claim. And copyright usually covers things like books, videos, miniatures, products from one's own imagination.
Imagination.
Whereas trademark is more about registering your brand. Trademarks cover things like business logos or business names. They are purely commercial. Basically, they are designed to say, this is our trademark term. Oh, honk honk. It is intrinsically linked to our business identity. That's what those little TMs mean. It's to denote that a word or symbol is trademarked, that it is registered. So you see it all the time, it's business stuff. Now, copyright expires after a while. You know, unless Disney get their way, in which case they will own all of culture by 2064, whereas trademarks do not. That's why McDonald's is still McDonald's, but anybody can make a burger. Ronald McDonald invented burgers, right? Honk honk. Now here's the big rub. You might have heard that companies are obligated to enforce their copyright, but that's wrong. They're not. You can't lose your copyright. It's just a myth. It expires after a while, sure, but it doesn't matter whether or not you're using it or other people are using it. Even if other people reproduce or distribute your stuff, your copyright claim does not weaken in any way. You're not under any affirmative obligation to enforce your copyright. That's just a business decision. Honk honk. What can be lost, however, are trademarks. You can lose those if you don't enforce them. Specifically if your trademark is no longer distinctive to you, if it's no longer identifiable as yours. So, an example of this would be, say, there is a miniature war game created called War Manners, and it's all about people's decorum during war. And then that company insists that all miniature wargaming is called war mannering. And everyone accepts this. Everyone starts to play along with this idea. And everyone starts calling their generic miniatures War Manor miniatures. I mean, after a while, you could argue that the War Manor term has lost its distinctiveness. It's no longer associated with a single brand. And then one day, the original creators might find that they can't claim the word War Manor anymore. And this would allow other companies to sell their own miniatures under the War Manor name. That's just an example, completely unrelated to any real or unreal companies. Honk honk. So all of this is to say that 3D cults are being kinda sneaky here. They're basically acquiescing to the trademark terms that Games Workshop have claimed, because they know the Games Workshop have a real carnal desire for those terms. And those trademark terms also happen to be very easily searchable online. I mean, between you and me, it feels more like this list of banned terms for paid creations are just 3D cults trying to make it harder for Games Workshop copyright squads from traversing through their databases. Without terms like Warhammer and 40k and Ultramarines, I guess, it's harder for Games Workshop copyright squads to find copyright infringing materials. If nothing paid for on 3D cults, or hell, the internet, has the term 40k or Warhammer either in the name or in the description, then how the hell do you find it? How do you Google a copyright infringement? Dear Google, find me an STL file of a Space Marine. Oh, nothing has come up. Okay, how about a tall man with a sword? No, not that kind. Angry face man. Oh, there's a lot of those. Sword man in big armor, but in space. With skulls. There's skulls. He's a knight, a space knight. This is hard. In such a world, to actually find copyright infringements, I mean, you'd have to do some real sleuthing. Maybe even click on to the second page of Google. You don't want to go there. Only doom awaits. So this is kind of really clever by 3D cults. Kind of acquiesces to what Games Workshop want, but also kind of doesn't. Can I take this off now? Oh, I'm so glad that's over. Unfortunately, this all kinda sucks for consumers, right? It hurts our ability to search websites for specific and relevant STL files. For example, if I want models that are designed to fit into the 40k setting, then absolutely, I want to be able to search up models using the word 40k. And Games Workshop are sort of annoyingly throwing a wrench into all of this. They're sort of forcing websites like 3D cults to present this shield so that those websites can defend themselves against the allegation that they're allowing, trademark terms to be bandied around their websites. A nice byproduct of this, though, is that 3D cults have now given us a list of words that are, I think they're indicative right now, but they are words that Games Workshop are presumably using to hunt the internet. So that's handy for us to know, right? We can organize some form of resistance. Hello there, Battle Brothers. So, will this be enough for Games Workshop? That's the big question. And the answer is it remains to be seen. This feels more like a bone being thrown to Games Workshop, rather than 3D Cults truly capitulating. But this isn't actually the big juiciest bit. You see, the most important part of all of this is what Pierre says next, and it absolutely feels like a red cloak to a raging bull. So, in his statement, Pierre says, quote, "Concerning the free models that have been identified by Games Workshop as potentially infringing, we have decided not to delete them because of the notion of fan art, and we will continue fighting on that point." Woo! Now you're speaking my language. Okay, this is huge. This is fire, as the youth are wont to say. And it's a really interesting point being raised by 3D Cults. A very clever point as well, because obviously books are covered by copyright, including the characters in those stories. But there are huge communities out there filled with fan fiction. Fan fiction which uses those copyrighted characters and stories in their own tales. Same with art. There's tons of amazing art out there that use copyrighted characters and settings, some of which regular viewers may be familiar with. And the reason for this is that the act of selling fan art or fan fiction or fan models is illegal. But making fan art, making fan fiction, making fan models is not in and of itself illegal. So if these miniatures aren't being sold on 3D Cults, well then mate, they're just fan models, aren't they? And look, fan creations are a very messy, very divisive part of copyright law. And it is a very, very, very big topic. But because most fan works are not harmful to the original material from which the fan work is derived, most copyright holders therefore don't bother going after fan creators. It's just not worth their time. However, in this case, I would say that absolutely fan models would be perceived by Games Workshop as very harmful to their business. And they very likely, strongly disagree with the position of 3D Cults here. Seriously, I cannot emphasize enough how 100% likely it is that 3D Cults will end up inside a courtroom facing Games Workshop. This argument is going to get tested by Games Workshop. It's either going to happen now in response to this or in the future, but it will happen because think about it. 3D Cults are essentially saying here that STL files, regardless of how close they hew to copyrighted Games Workshop miniatures, I mean, the STL files could be identical to existing Games Workshop materials. But regardless, 3D Cults will not take them down if the original creator is not charging for them. And let me be clear here, Games Workshop absolutely do not give a flying f**k whether these creators are charging for the models or not. In fact, Games Workshop probably perceive it as even worse if those creators are giving the models away and freely distributing them. I think that 3D Cults are taking a very principled position here. I actually support them in this. But I can't see how Games Workshop doesn't eventually seek to make an example of 3D Cults here in a very public, performative way. And worryingly, if Games Workshop do indeed take 3D Cults to court, and then Games Workshop win such a court case, the reverberations, the ramifications of such a judgment in their favor would be massive, like far beyond the miniature sphere. It could have a huge impact on fandom communities everywhere. And it would set a really dangerous precedent for fan fiction, fan art. So, you know, maybe you should start backing up all those Pinkie Pie pictures. Because being no doubt, I think that Games Workshop would throw absolutely everything they have into a court case like this. They would really want a favorable outcome in this one. Because as much as Games Workshop sycophants like to make fun of 3D printer bros, Games Workshop themselves do acknowledge that 3D printing is indeed a long-term existential threat to their entire business model. I mean, it's long-term, sure, but they can see the future. They talk about this in their annual reports. They recognize 3D printing what it is. It is the death of the traditional business model, potentially. So of course Games Workshop would want to make a massive impact on this space. They would want their word to be law. And I think, honestly, we might see that happen in this case. And if not today, it's going to happen eventually. They are going to bump up against one another. Games Workshop's perspective, 3D Cult's perspective, they are incompatible. There can only be one. And I'm rooting for 3D Cults. I'm just saying. Like, good luck. At the end of the day, though, I don't think that pursuing legal action against 3D STL file sharing websites is the right course of action for Games Workshop. It's not the solution to their problem. I mean, just ask the music industry. Stamping down on kids who have downloaded mislabeled music on LimeWire didn't exactly save music labels, did it? No, they had to adopt their entire industry, their entire business in order to survive file sharing. And on top of that, Games Workshop need to be wary because they have a nasty record when it comes to court cases accidentally shining a light on some of their claims. Claims which turn out to be a lot shakier when you actually examine them. And this is something that I discuss in my video covering whether or not Games Workshop were right to take down the YouTuber Commissar Gamza here. So my eyes are watching this case. I'm gonna keep following it. And a huge thank you to Sonic Bread and Beauregard Quitman and to all my patrons. Thanks a lot for helping me keep the lights on. And if you think that this content provides value to the community, please do consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/discourseminiatures. And as always, I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye! I do have a real Joker vibe right now. Oh.